Hey guys, so this is going to be an in-depth overview of talent selection for Arms Warrior, and then I'm going to show you a couple different builds that I use for different fights. So first row, you got Dauntless Overpower, Sweeping Strikes. Overpower is pretty much only used for PvP because of the unable to be blocked, dodged, or parried. And for PvE, it has no rage, so it can't proc our Colossus Smash, Mortal Strike with Tactician, and it also is still on the GCD, so it doesn't really have much of a use for us there. Dauntless is the go-to for single target, just because it buffs your single target damage with just 10% less rage, whereas anything with more than one person to hit, Sweeping Strikes is the go-to. 10% less rage isn't a ton to be able to counter Sweeping Strikes, even if it's got a little bit, so fights like Sisters, you'll still see Sweeping Strikes being taken a lot, just for that time where you have the owl up at the same time as the boss, so you can cleave onto both of them at the same time, and also be able to get that executioner's precision onto the main boss. So for these two, these are the main two that you'll take. Dauntless for single target, so a fight like Goroth, you're going to take Dauntless. Sweeping Strikes for any AoE situation that you have, so anything like Kill Jaden, Host, Archatan, fights like that. Tier 2, this one's a little more up to you. I always use double time for when I'm in a raid, just mobility's good. Mythic Plus, you'll see a lot of people take Shockwave because it just helps out with being able to dish out a stun for your group, especially with certain affixes. And Stormbolt, another PvP talent, got the range stun and does a little bit of damage, just like double what Shockwave does. But for raiding, I'd say go ahead and stick with double time. For Mythic Plus, Shockwave. So that's my single target build so far. Row 3, Trauma, Rend, Avatar. Trauma, I don't use much anymore. I'm about to start using it for Archatan just because you use Whirlwind so much in that fight, so it'll increase that damage a little bit. Rend for the single targets or even the 2-target cleave, so if I like Demonic Inquisition, you can keep Rend on both targets very easily, but when you have 3 or more, it takes too much time to be able to keep Rend on both targets. And then Avatar I've actually been using a lot more recently. I actually use it in Mythic Plus, that way I can burst down the harder trash mobs, and then for a fight like Kill Jaden, it syncs up really well with his ads that he spawns. It's about the same amount of time, so Avatar works really well for him. And I always use Umbral Moonglaves with it just because it's got the minute-and-a-half cooldown to go with it, so just flat out makes Umbral Moonglaves do 20% more damage, which is very nice. So for row 3, single target, Rend, multi-target, I like Avatar because I can group burst AoE them down with what we have here. I usually use Ravager with it, but I'll get down to that. And then Trauma, it's more of a special selection if you use a lot of Whirlwind. So a fight like Archatan where it's constant AoE, or even Mistress would be a good one because it's constant AoE. And if I'm going to use Trauma, I'm also going to pair it with the Legendary Belt and probably the Legendary Legs. That way the Whirlwind can be buffed, and since I'm Whirlwinding so much, I can have CS on at all times. For Tier 4, Second Wind, Bounding Stride, and Defensive Stance. Bounding Stride is pretty much your go-to. Second Wind for solo content, but that's really about it for Second Wind. And then Defensive Stance you can kind of use for if you want to, let's say, a fight like Mythic Goroth where there's a lot of damage taken and you know that there's about to be some raid-wide damage. You can pop that real quick just so you can help out your healers a little bit. But I'd say it's more effective to use Commanding Shout and coordinate that than to just have one person swap to Defensive Stance, especially if you have a couple warriors. But Defensive Stance can be useful in certain situations just to help out your healers, but I find Bounding Stride to be a lot more valuable for us for being able to leap out and charge in, or be able to get behind the mechanics. Let's say Mythic Goroth again, be able to get behind the pillars. I'd say Bounding Stride's a better take. Next tier, Tier 5, Fervor Battle, Mortal Combo, Titanic Might. I use Titanic Might for everything. I don't use Mortal Combo, that's not very good because you only have the one Shattered Defenses buff. And then Fervor Battle, people mistake it and they'll think that it's an AoE talent, but it only does damage to your primary target. So sure, when you're whirlwinding more, let's just say a fight like Archatan, if you keep targeted on Archatan, he's going to take 80% more with your whirlwind. and you'd also run trauma with that, but it's not doing any bonus damage to your AoE targets, so all the other Murlocs that you're trying to kill at the same time. So that's why I prefer Titanic Might, because that'll make your Warbreaker on all your AoE targets have a longer debuff, or if you were taking your Weight of the Earth legs and doing a leap, also give them a longer debuff, and in all situations I think Titanic Might's a better talent choice. Tier 6, Deadly Calm in for the kill, Focused Rage. Focused Rage is dead. Obviously used to be the go-to talent, but anymore it's not even worth playing around with. Focused Rage is dead. In for the kill is what you're going to take most of the time just because the haste is so valuable. And Deadly Calm doesn't really work for us anymore since the Focused Rage build was done, since they put them both on the same level. It used to be amazing to be able to hit Focused Rage while you're in your battle cry, and it's just not anything anymore. In for the kill is the only talent at this level. And the last tier, Anger Management, Opportunity Strikes, Ravager. Anger Management used to go really well with Deadly Calm back with the Focused Rage build, and that was on a different tier, but anymore it's not really worth it for us. Opportunity Strikes and Ravager, there's a lot of debate between the two of those. I prefer Ravager for every fight. I think it is a good way to start out and get a bunch of rage. It's also a good way to AoE burst because you can drop the Ravager and do all your damage at the same time. Whereas with Opportunity Strikes, it has the chance based on the target's health, so you can't even really see exactly how much it's going to do. And then when it does proc, it's only 5 rage, whereas this gets 7 rage every time it deals damage. So you drop your Ravager. I'm generally good on rage for the entire fight. Every time I try Opportunity Strikes, it just never seems to do as much damage as Ravager. And when I sim myself, Ravager has higher numbers than Opportunity Strikes. So for the sample builds that I was going to tell you, single target, it's right here. So you got Dauntless, Double Time, Ren, Bounding Stride, Titanic Might in for the kill, Ravager for single target. Even though Ravager it's an AoE ability and this is single target ability, I still find Ravager to be better. For AoE cleave, fights like Desolate Host, Heroic Kill Jaden, I'll run Sweeping Strikes, Double Time, Avatar, Bounding Stride, Titanic Might in for the kill, Ravager. And then I always sync up my Avatar with the Umbral Moonglaves, and if I have Avatar, I have Umbral Moonglaves, whereas when I am running the single target build, I'll switch to the Stat Trinket, but I always have a COF. Even 895 COF is better than the 920 Umbral Moonglaves I have, or the 930 Vial that I have. Here it is. And then there are some fights where you could do a third build where it's more of Sweeping Strikes, Trauma, Bounding Stride, Titanic Might in for the kill, Ravager. And if I am going to go with that Trauma build for the Whirlwind for a fight like Harjatan or Mistress Sazine, I'm going to completely change up my legendaries too. So I'm going to swap into, from these, I'll swap into Weight of the Earth, and I'll swap into Legendary Belt. That way I can get the buffed Whirlwind from the Legendary, buffed Whirlwind from Trauma, and then buffed Whirlwind through the Colossus Smash on here, as well as Warbreaker, and then Titanic Might to keep the debuff on target for longer. That way I'm able to keep doing the increased damage, because Colossus Smash does an extra 80% to them, Trauma's an extra 20%, and then an additional hit with your Whirlwind. So I hope that helped you out with being able to select your talents for each situation. Those are the 3 that I run right now, and anytime anything new comes out, I'll make another video and update you guys with a new build that the higher end raiders are running. That way you could always do the most damage as possible. If you have any questions, leave it in the comment section below. Other than that, see you next time.